All right, welcome back to the innovation stage at AI for Cybersecurity. Our next speaker is Paulo Shakarian. He is the CEO at CYR3CON. Please join me in welcoming him to our virtual stage.
Thank you, Patrika. I'm happy to be here. So I'm Paulo Shakarian, CEO and co-founder of CYR3CON. And my background originally is in machine learning, but I've been working with a great team where we've been applying these techniques to some rather important cybersecurity problems. And what we found in working with customers is that by using machine learning to predict the activities of hackers, we can also better quantify risk and even costs. So today, hence the title of today's talk, simultaneously reducing both costs and cyber risk through the use of machine learning. So I'll give you some quick examples. So in December of this past year, we all know the company FireEye was breached, and out of that breach, the Russian hackers stole penetration testing tools that FireEye was using to break into high-end customers to evaluate their security. Now, many of these tools used software vulnerabilities that weren't widely known to be exploited. However, we were able to use machine learning in our platform to successfully predict all of those vulnerabilities that were later found to be used in hacking tools, even before the FireEye disclosures. A couple months earlier, there was a similar incident where the National Security Agency here in the US released a list of software vulnerabilities that they said were being used by Chinese nation-state hackers. Now, when you look at how these vulnerabilities were assessed based on the National Institute of Standards prioritization score, almost half of them were considered non-critical, yet they were being actively used in attacks, according to the NSA. Again, here, the CYR3CON platform was able to use machine learning to predict the use of these vulnerabilities also ahead of the NSA's disclosure. Third example, we had two examples dealing more with very high-level nation-state hackers, and now in this third example, we're dealing more with cybercrime. There's been a lot of ransomware going around, especially in light of all the work from home due to the pandemic. One ransomware gang known as the Netwalker gang, they went on sort of a spree. One of the victims was the University of Utah that paid nearly $500,000 to the ransomware gang. And again, this ransomware attack was launched using vulnerabilities that we were able to predict well in advance, months in advance of the attack. And so why are all these attacks happening? Why is everyone falling behind in this? And it's not that these organizations who get breached are necessarily incompetent. It more has to do with the rate at which vulnerabilities are disclosed. There are over 1,600 new vulnerabilities disclosed every month. And so for teams that are managing vulnerability prioritization within the enterprise, they're simply becoming overwhelmed. Now, while of course it's best practice to patch as many of the vulnerabilities as you can, or ideally patch all of them, while you're waiting for those vulnerabilities to be patched, organizations have what's called the window of risk. And that is, even if I've identified the vulnerabilities properly, and now I have them listed in some sort of queue on which to address first, that takes time. And everyone has limited resources. So while you're working to fix those security issues, this window of risk is open to the bad guys. So let me show you a little bit what I mean by this. So if you take a list of software vulnerabilities in your enterprise today and use the CVSS scoring, which is used in most major products, and that's sort of the universal standard that exists today, you are not prioritizing vulnerabilities by the probability that the hackers will actually use them in an attack like the ones I showed in the earlier slides. And so if you look at the window of risk, it looks something like this, where red is higher probability vulnerabilities, orange less so, and yellow is sort of low probability. The CVSS score has been shown by peer-reviewed research to not be predictive of what the bad guys will actually use. And so by utilizing sort of the standard products, the order in which those vulnerabilities are addressed has nothing to do with the probability that the bad guys will use them. And you have something that looks like this. Notice there's some ones that are red that are being sealed up way late in the process. And you really want a vulnerability that has a high chance of being attacked to have to wait at the bottom of the queue. Now, of course, the issue is most people don't know what those probabilities are, and that's because this has been something that hasn't been generally available. But if you did, your window of risk looks something like this. Now you're shutting the window of risk, starting with the most dangerous vulnerabilities first, the things that the bad guys might actually use to attack the enterprise. So here's a quick view of our platform that is designed for this. What you see here in this dashboard view is a list of software vulnerabilities. The CY rating score tells you how many times more likely that vulnerability is to be used in an attack than average. And the machine learning algorithm is fueled with threat intelligence from various hacker communities, deep web, dark web, social media, and so on. And so the idea here was to provide sort of a one-stop shop for this type of analysis. And of course, we also have a very strong and robust API that provides this information as well, if you're looking to use it in a more automated way. So let me give you a quick example of what this looks like with a real customer. So here's a software vulnerability from 2018. It had a low NIST score. It was in the client environment as recently as May of 2020. They knew it was in their environment. They had it in their lists. They did not view it as a priority. But here's what the CYR3CON platform was able to show them. It had a 38 times score more likely to be exploited than average. And this is the highest level of scoring that the system provides. But it also shows why it provided that score. Active exploits, Russian hacker discussions, attack demonstration in Cuba. So the intelligence and the machine learning is telling a much different story than the NIST CVSS score, which is not based on these kind of things. So where do these scores come from? Well, what we do is we collect two different types of data. We collect intelligence, things that are inherently predictive in nature, what the hackers are saying, who they are, and so on. And this can come from places like social media, the dark web, Chan sites, pay sites, and so on. But that's predictive, and we don't know how accurate that information is. So it's been important for us to also collect information about actual attacks where the vulnerabilities are used in an actual attack. And we take a multi-sourced approach here as well. What machine learning does is it correlates these two very different pools of data together in a sophisticated way. And this is what we originally developed under some sponsorship from the Navy and the US intelligence community when we were first getting the company going. But today now this advanced technology is available to the enterprise. Fueling all this is a very robust and sophisticated data collection infrastructure. We're collecting literally hundreds of thousands of different types of hacker discussions every day. And that's what's fueling the ability to predict, because the platform is essentially reading everything the hackers are saying prior to when these attacks are occurring. Now, putting it all together, what does this mean for the enterprise? Well, if we assume that we're patching vulnerabilities using what all the current products are giving you today, which is a NIST CVSS scoring, you're at the blue line. So right away, we're looking at the fraction of vulnerabilities patched over time. This is information from an actual client. And right away, with the initial tranche of patches, they are, patching 40% of vulnerabilities, and they're reducing the breaches, the expected number of breaches by about half, a little more than half. With CYR3CON, using machine learning, we can apply now the same number of patches and reduce the expected breaches by 80%. And it's all because we're putting things in the right order based on the likelihood of attack. Also notice with the orange line, the CYR3CON line, we approach nearing 100% avoidance of breaches much quicker than you do with the blue line. And that's because there's many vulnerabilities the hackers simply don't show a lot of interest in and are very low probability. This can then translate into actual cost reduction, because now that we can quantify the amount of breaches and the reduction in that, at any given point in the window, we can look at the expected cost due to breach. And here again, we can see at the point in the window where this was taken, the cost to breach using CYR3CON is $602,000, as opposed to current methods, which put it at $3.4 million for this customer. So what we do is to get people acquainted with our platform is we offer what's called a predictive threat assessment. And the predictive threat assessment will take a list of your software vulnerabilities, review them with our platform, provide you the cost-benefit analysis, as well as the evidence, what the hackers have said as to why certain vulnerabilities should be prioritized more than others. And this is really designed to give you kind of a first taste of how to take a more risk-based approach and reduce costs using the CYR3CON platform en route to regular use, which is a very, like I said, it's a SaaS-based platform, API or web-based driven. So that's about it for today. Thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Paulo. All right. If you're looking for your next session, you can go ahead and take a look at your agenda to see where you're going next, or take some time to connect with your peers with virtual networking. Thanks so much, and we'll see you around.